And the fact that the economy has remained strong and markets don't seem to care too much, in a way, is sort of furthering the odds that we're going to see sort of more tariffs. Listen, the overall effect is not going to put likely it's not going to put the economy into recession, but there'll be a lot of losers, and for those companies and those workers, this is a lot of pain, and I would expect there to be more pain because I think there's going to be more tariffs. This will not be the end. I think the issue is, are we going to see 10%? Will that get ratcheted back up to 25% at some point? There's a long way to go.
Jimmy, that's my question. You know, you talk about this not being the end in terms of more pain coming. You've looked at the history of these trade wars, and I'm wondering where the off-ramp is traditionally. I mean, at some point, the sort of tit-for-tat tariff escalation has to end. Over the course of history in these battles that we've seen in decades past, how do these things end, and where do you think there could be an off-ramp here for the United States and China to stop this sort of cycle of tariff implementation?
Well, listen, if this were like, past episodes, the off-ramp would be something like what the Chinese earlier proposed, which is more purchases of U.S. goods, agriculture, energy, lower some tariffs, maybe doing something about these joint technology agreements where we think they're stealing their technology. That might be where the off-ramp is, but I don't think it is. I think what we're seeing here is something far longer term, where you have these two economies, which are closely entangled, trying to be sort of disentangled in some areas, particularly technology, where you have sort of two different technology ecosystems. This has not been done before, so I think there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. But there's not going to be an off-ramp, I don't think, because of some deal where they buy more sorghum.
The president's goals, the White House's goals, ostensibly are twofold. Number one, punish China for their theft, get them to play on what they call a sort of fair trade playing field, and also to get manufacturers to build more stuff here, create more jobs in America. Will this work in solving either of those two issues?
Listen, I think if the goal is to sort of de-emphasize China in the supply chains, there may be some success where these things could go elsewhere, whether it's Vietnam, other places in Asia. I think getting iPhones built in California, that's not going to happen. But I think the supply chains will change. I think overall the big trade deficits are not going to change. They'll be redistributed to different countries. But the U.S. is going to focus a lot of this on the national security implications, the supply chain implications, where China is also going to focus on, they think they're overly dependent on U.S. technology. These things are not going to be solved tomorrow. So these will be longer-term issues that markets are going to have to sort of digest.
The supply chain issue is indeed one of global nature, but Eamon Javers, I remember 20 years ago how people were screaming that the Mexican maquiladoras, the assembly workers there, were stealing American jobs. Those jobs left Mexico and went to China. We know capital is going to go where it is cheapest and free and flows the most freely, he said. Do you think that to Jimmy's point, do you think we could see a situation where the administration gets what it wants, maybe punishing China, but those jobs do not come back to the United States? Instead, they simply go, to Jimmy's point, to Vietnam, to Laos, to Bangladesh.
Yeah, the question is, Brian, how can you make the American worker at the labor cost the American worker has to be at competitive with those people, right? And that's the challenge for this administration. You know, you saw the president tweeting about Apple bringing its production back to the United States. He wants to see, he knows that Apple's going to be impacted by these Chinese tariffs, but he wants to see Apple make its products in the United States. How can he make that competitive around the world? Does that envision a tariff regime on countries across the world, all the countries you just listed? Is that where we have to go in order to make this work? You know, the administration says each step of the way that, you know, this is just a threat. This is not really happening. This is just for negotiating purposes. Well, now it's possibly on the verge of really happening, and you have to think about how you stop it at the end of the train. And it's not clear that we know exactly where this train is going at this point.
When do you think, Jimmy, the markets do react? Is there a pain point for stocks where we finally say the Dow drops 500 because I can't believe we went this far? Because we have not seen that. China's reacting. Chinese market's down over 25%. What's our pain point?
Well, I mean, theoretically, if there's enough tumult in the Chinese economy and Chinese markets, I mean, that will have a spillover effect. I'm not sure exactly what those are and when they happen. But I think if we get the full Megillah, which is full, the tariffs on the full like $500 or so billion, and they're not 10%, they're 20%. That's real money. I would expect that would have an impact. And certainly I think the administration is aware of the impact of these sort of larger tariff numbers, since it seems to be focusing more on 10%, both for the market implications as well as the impact on U.S. consumers, which they're very sensitive about.